Hi, I'm Lisa Gale, and you're listening to the podcast for Texas Holistic Educators. So many parents and teachers these days have big concerns about the current state of modern education and are seeking a healthier way, one that addresses kids' whole brain needs as well as their emotional, physical, and spiritual needs. Texas Holistic Educators connect parents and teachers across the state who are cultivating healthy practices in their schools and homes with the intention of empowering others to do the same. So my guest today is Aaron Harting. Welcome, Aaron.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me on. Good morning.
So Aaron is the founder and president of CSW Associates, an educational consulting firm based in Houston, Texas. He also works as the head of curriculum and development for T.H.E Classroom, a mindfulness and movement-based resource for parents and educators. Aaron applies the curriculum he's developing at Oak Forest Elementary School, where he also teaches full-time. He's been teaching yoga and mindfulness for 13 years and 5 years in the public school system. So, Aaron, you're obviously passionate about mindfulness education for kids, so I'm curious what your story is. How did you come to be a student of mindfulness and of yoga?
My first introduction to mindfulness was through my mother, who's been practicing for probably 25 or 30 years maybe. When I was in high school, she would invite me to practice yoga with her. So she was, I think, my first introduction to yoga and meditation. And I've been practicing, I've been practicing meditation for a very long time, like since I was a kid. But I really got into yoga during my last few years of college. I had been leading kind of an unhealthy lifestyle. I had just gotten back. I was attending the University of Oklahoma at the time, and I had just returned from studying abroad in St. Petersburg, Russia, and I had formed a bunch of unhealthy habits of just like physically and mentally, and I felt like I was sort of stagnating in my growth, and so I found the only yoga studio that I knew about in Norman, Oklahoma, and I showed up and I started taking classes. And the way that it directed my focus and kind of made my body feel, I was hooked from that point on. And it's like, I mean, I to sort of be corny, the rest is history. Like, I fell in love with the practice, and I went a little bit nutty at first. I started practicing probably at least 3 hours a day, but as many as maybe 6. So I would practice in 2 or 3 hour chunks every day. And at that time, I also began working in an outpatient an inpatient psychiatric facility for children and adolescents. And so I was kind of in this space of like developing myself, but then also having this kind of like being able to share that, or like share what I was learning with kids that had, gone through a really difficult time. So it's sort of, I guess it was serendipitous that these two things occurred so somewhat simultaneously in my life. But when I was able to share it in that sort of environment, when I was able to share yoga and mindfulness and meditation in an environment with kids that were, having really having a difficult time in their lives, like it really, I think, stuck with me that that's something that I really wanted to do more of and have a larger impact. I really saw my ability to give beyond myself. I saw that as like probably like my number one opportunity. So I ran with it.
Wow. That's a inspiring story, actually. I'm curious, what about, you said you first got introduced to yoga by your mom, and I'm guessing she, as you said, she was practicing. How did you start practicing with her, or what about her experience from your perspective inspired you to want to give it a try when you were a teenager?
I viewed my mom. I've always viewed my mom as a very like mentally tough person. She, when I was very small, when I was very young, she was a professional dancer and choreographer. So she was an artist when I was a child. When I was a teenager, she started working as a social worker. And so I know the things that she was dealing with on a day-to-day basis. She was working with Child Protective Services, actually. So the types of things she was encountering, I think, in her work were just very, very difficult, and at times, I think for most people, we'd call it traumatic. But she was able to, maintain a healthy attitude and a positive state of mind in what she was doing. And I think I really admired that about her. And I was an athlete in high school. I was a wrestler, and just having that sort of connection to my body, it felt really good to me then. Wrestlers, I think, are sort of notorious for doing a lot of damage to their bodies, and it's a quite an intense activity to pursue, and so I feel like when she introduced me to yoga, it was sort of a good complement to that, like a good way to balance what I was doing to my body when I was wrestling.
Wow. Well, you obviously had some kind of body intelligence operating at that time to know that you needed some kind of balance to the wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, gosh, well, thanks for sharing all of that. That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like you found something that really worked for you, and you got passionate about it, and you wanted to share it with others, and that's what you're still doing. And
yes,
you're doing quite a bit of it. When I look at all of the work that you're doing in the world, and I know that you're a dad with
yes,
2 young boys and a husband, and so you're making time to do what you're passionate about, as well as be a family guy. So, wow.
Well, if I try and practice what I preach as much as possible, because I don't, and I know it sounds kind of crazy, like I already said a mouthful, but like there's more I want to do, and there's more, like, I want to get it out there to as many people as possible, to so that they can hopefully find the same benefit, or like connect to themselves as I connected to myself, in a way that, like, made me feel as my best self. And so anybody, when everyone's feeling themselves, like the best part of themselves are coming forward, then that's the kind of world I want to live in. Yeah,
me too. So can we talk about that? The work that you are doing, absolutely. The other ideas that you have that you're moving into. I know you've founded your own company called CSW, and when I first saw those letters, I wondered, what does that mean? What does that stand for? So I have to know.
Okay, so I started my company because I'm sort of in a bit of a transition. Like I'm starting to work with curriculum development to share with like parents and teachers. I'm also starting to develop some after school resources. So it's sort of like it was a general company to maybe work as a base from for all of these various undertakings. But it's a very important name to me, and it's to me, it's sort of like, if I think about it, it's just a reminder of everything that means to me. So I've been studying Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism for the last 13 years or more. And I studied for, how long has it been now? A Taoist master who I met, how old? 7 years ago, or around 7 years ago. And just the experiences and the perspective on life that I gained through this teacher's guidance have really profoundly impacted my life for the better. And he gave me this name, and the full name, which I'll share with you now, it's very special to me. And in Taoism, they give names to like priests. Typically, they don't have a name that you sort of start attaching your personality to. They have a name that's more like a concept, and this concept is sort of reminds you of your true nature. So that's a little bit of a background behind what this name is about. So the name that my Taoist master gave me was Cold, Still Water, Reflecting Heaven. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like evocative of a natural occurrence, right? So like when you see cold, still water and the sky reflected in the water. So the CSW is cold, still water. And every time, basically, even when I say it to you now, just basically when I see that, it brings me almost to like a time and place or that concept in my mind, and it sort of just gets me still, gets me centered, and kind of brings me right to that best version of myself where I know that I can love and serve my world to the best of my ability.
Wow. What a gift. I feel that. I can feel that in my body too, the shift when you say it. That's really beautiful. So, reflecting heaven, that brings me to, really a little bit more of the essence of what we're talking about today, and that's the concept of holistic education. Holistic education, I'm curious, what does that mean to you personally, and then how does it inform the work that you're doing with children and with families?
I mean, holistic to me really means it's really addressing each learner. I mean, holistic, it's just, to me, to say it very, I guess, succinctly, which I'm not known to do very often, is it's like a mind, body, spirit connection, and addressing all the aspects and needs of each learner or student or person, however you want to describe that, and seeing each individual where they're at, and to try and be as present and engaged and as mindful as possible to see what that is for each person. And when And I know it's a very, maybe it could come across as being vague, but it's like if you see someone where they're at, you're more likely to be able to see them for who they are and what they might need in that particular moment. And it's not, oh, hey, here, you're not working correctly, here's this thing that I think you should have. It's really genuinely sort of it's almost like, it's so hard to put into words.
Do you mean
I think that's
really?
the closest I can get. That's like the closest I feel like I can get to it. You're not trying to control what's going on with that person and say, oh, here you need this, this, and this. It's seeing that person for who they are and what's important to them. So like Owen, my son, goes to Beehive, and what is really important to Owen is being a builder, and Owen loves to build. And you could give him all of the art activities, which he will get something out of. But if you give him blocks or something to build with, he's totally on his own engaged in that activity. He engages himself. He loses himself in that activity, or he becomes fully engaged in it. It's like he becomes that activity when he's doing it. And it's, to me, that's like the coolest thing to see is a student, a learner, a person becoming so engaged in what they're doing in play, in work. I mean, I don't know, with the right perspective, to me, or with a particular perspective, work and play, you might be able to take away the difference between the two. So sometimes if Owen's building at home, I'm saying he's working really hard, but he doesn't think of it in that sort of way that we as boring adults sometimes think of work. It's like, oh, it's drudgery, but he's just fully engaged, like 100% in what he's doing. And I think I would like to use that as like an analogy for like what is holistic education. It would be like finding that for each person. Like what is going to make them passionate from the inside out, or what, giving them the tools and resources to find those things for themselves that will fully engage them in the learning process. And I mean, to me, I think that's, in Taoism, they say there's like the finger pointing at the moon, and sometimes don't look at the finger or you'll miss all of the heavenly glory. There's a famous scene in the Bruce Lee movie where he is with a student and saying that. And I feel like holistic education is, it's the moon, but don't look at the finger. But I'm telling you to look at the finger, but look at the moon. That's what, like, I mean, and that maybe that's a little flowery for some people, but to me, I think that if we can all find that part of ourselves to become fully engaged with what we're doing, I mean, that to me is like the ultimate aim of holistic education, and it sees people, their physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional needs, and can hopefully get us to that place where we're all that engaged, like best version of ourselves, passionate learners.
Yeah,
I hope that answers the question.
That was very well said. You painted a great picture, and I'm sort of swept up in it. And I heard key words like engaged the learner is engaged. They're passionate about what they're doing. They've almost become one with what they're doing. The line between work and play is blurred. And so I'm thinking about the cognitive development that's happening for a child or an adult in that scenario that you just described, whether it's blocks or anything else that they're doing. I'm thinking about all the cognitive development that can occur, the executive functioning skills, the curiosity, the critical thinking, the creativity, the problem solving, and the passion and interest and engagement to solve the problems. So, and it's wonderful that kids like Owen have an environment where they can do that, where they can learn that way. And I think about, maybe the contrast of current typical education, mainstream education, and how would you see, what is the difference that you see as a dad and also as an educator that's in the public school system? What's the difference that you see there? And then what might classroom teachers do to begin to bridge that, knowing everything that we know about how busy their day is and how much pressure they have to perform and to create students who are performing to certain state set standards? What are maybe some simple things, if there is such a thing, that those teachers could begin to do just in a few minutes a day, or maybe with a slight mindset shift to help bridge that if there is a gap between what's currently happening and that scenario of holistic education that you described?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that just shot into my head when you were asking that is, just number one, like, take care of yourself. Make sure you're drinking enough water, you're eating the right foods, like really basic stuff. Teachers are definitely givers, and they can tend to put everyone else ahead of themselves. And I think it's really important for them to find, for each individual teacher, instructor, to be engaging with those things themselves, and to find something that they are passionate or engaged with learning, to find that connection to themselves. Of like one of the teachers at my school is super into mountain biking. Another one really likes hunting, but that's where he's the most engaged and probably feels the best version of himself. To me, if it almost sounds like lofty, but you have to be really paying attention to what's going on with you. And to me, that's where a mindfulness practice comes in. So even just a couple minutes a day, sitting and doing nothing, or sitting and bringing your attention back to your breathing. So really simple, but practice, but it's not easy, is what I like to tell both my child and adult students. It's a simple practice to sit and observe your breathing, but it's not easy sometimes. We feel this constant need to control, and I should be controlling my mind, and I should be this, and I should be that. And to quote my Taoist master, you don't should all over yourself, and that's a little vulgar, but you don't. It's just a practice of being present, noticing the thoughts, noticing the breathing, and really stepping into the present moment, and then getting super curious about what is it that what is it that really I love to do? What is it that really engages me? if I could do anything today, what would it be? Or if I could do, for an adult, it might be like, if money was no object, what would I be doing? And to discover that for themselves. And personally, for me, that's kind of what I have found engages me the most is if it's, for me, for me, I really enjoy outdoor education. I really enjoy, I took a survival course last year that was like, really got me super connected with myself and kind of, I felt like gave me this deep connection between myself and the natural world that I had been searching for since I was a child, or like that I hadn't connected with since I was very young. So to me, it's all about self-knowledge. It's all about self-awareness, and mindfulness practice to me is the ground floor of that.
So you're saying, I love how when I asked what's one thing that they could do, you brought the focus right back on the teacher, and I'm guessing that applies to parents too, to take better care of themselves.
Yeah, I think, and as a parent and an educator, we get good at making excuses. And we say, oh, well, I can't do this because I shouldn't spend that money on myself, or I shouldn't take time away from my kids, or I shouldn't ask that of my spouse. When really, if what you're spending money on or taking time away for is going to make you a more present, kind, loving, compassionate person, it's not a good excuse not to take the time. So whether it's 5 minutes or if it's 30 minutes in the morning to do what makes you feel your best, we should stop making excuses for not doing the things that make us passionate, curious learners. And that's something that may come through in our conversation, is that's like, for me, that's something that's super important personally, is I always want to be looking at the latest information coming from sports medicine, for example, to like inform my physical body practice, my fitness practice. Or what is the latest research coming from mindfulness practices in education? How can I give my students an experience of mindfulness and a practice that they can take with them throughout their lives? So, or how can I plant the seeds that even if it doesn't connect for them right now, maybe down the road they'll find it to be an enriching practice to engage in. So, I mean, I think curiosity and presence go a really long way to shifting the paradigm. And we're not islands unto ourselves. So to me, when an individual changes or makes some kind of a shift, everyone in their immediate orbit is going to feel a change. And, teachers have a lot of demands on their time. It's being an ancillary teacher, witnessing witnessing the other, like, sort of departmentalized teachers, what they're teaching, math or reading, writing. I'm really amazed by these people and their levels of organization and patience and creativity. I feel like teachers are probably the most special people in the world because they have a desire to do that. I think they have a desire to see people where they're at. And not only see people where they're at, but hey, this is where you are in your reading. Let me meet you where you're at, and then give you a little challenge to help to keep it interesting for you. I really feel strongly that each individual teacher should take the best possible care of themselves with no excuses. And that's where we start.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And so throw away the excuses. Take 2 minutes sometime in your 24 hours when you're not sleeping to sit and be present and just focus on the breath. And then, as you said, get curious beyond that.
Super curious.
Begin to get curious. Yes. And then I heard you say, you mentioned the orbit of the teacher, meaning the classroom of students around them, not to mention their families and in their personal lives, but the one simple but not easy, perhaps, change of habit and how that can affect everyone around them. And when one teacher is lit up about something in their life, whether it's directly related to their teaching or not, how does that shift that person's maybe physiology, and then how does that affect the people around them?
Oh, it's like, I love the way you worded that question. It's that change in physiology. It's immediate. It's like posture, and there's like this. When you're passionate and excited, it comes through. You might be able to tell in the way that I'm speaking to you. Like, it's sort of like there's a bubbliness, like a buzzing in the energy that that excitement and that curiosity brings to your interactions with other people. I think it was years ago, somebody told me about like a practice where you could have sort of asked yourself this question, like you're about to put something in your mouth. It's like, higher self, what do you want to eat right now? And your higher self already knows, like, okay, I should eat a little lighter right now, or I should drink. You know what? I'm going to drink a little more water instead of filling up on food or bread or whatever it is. Wow, that change in physiology is so huge, and it directly comes from that curiosity and passion from your own learning, your own experience, and physiology is like the biggest thing. I like to talk a lot about language, physiology, and focus as like a triad or like a triangle of things. That's how you can shift, I feel like, anything you really want in your life, whether it's your health or a relationship or your teaching methodology. And if your physiology, think about the physiology. What does the physiology of boredom look like? You know, you can sort of already, like, immediately in your head picture a person who looks bored. And, you know, their eyes are half open and their posture is, you know, kind of slouching. There's just not a whole lot of excitement and energy. Their breathing is probably shallow, if they even notice what that's like. Their movements might be sluggish and kind of slow. But any shift in physiology sort of any bit of explosiveness. And I sort of think like dancing. Like dancing is a great example of like just passion for life. I feel like most cultures probably when there's like a lot of like passion or joie de vivre, like it's like there's dancing going on. There's music, there's dancing. And this is something that I love about working with kids. It doesn't matter who they are or where they're from. When you put on some music, the kids are going to get moving. And I think adults could seriously have a better sense of humor with themselves and get right in there with them. I mean, moving your body in a way that you're unaccustomed to will shake things up.
Agreed. So now I'd love to hear you talk about the work that you're doing, because you got lit up when you started describing movement and physiology. So how does that segue into the work that you're currently doing? And then also if you could talk about CSW and what you're developing and who can benefit from the tools and the resources.
Oh, okay. So, yes, this last summer of 2018, a former student of mine who came to yoga with like her own unique story of difficulty and struggle, and got a lot out of the kind of somatic benefit of yoga, sort of like working stress out of your tissues. She's a community leader in Wharton, Texas, and she called me, I guess it was in the spring last year, and said, hey, I want to put together a yoga program. Do you know anybody that could do it? And I was like, I'll do it. Let's do this. And so basically what we did is we went to Wharton. I developed a curriculum very similar to the one that I developed for my elementary school here in Houston. And we taught this program. I sort of trained teachers on the job to teach this curriculum that is sort of I guess the exact proper name of it would be like post-disaster, like post-traumatic stress recovery yoga. And we taught second grade kids, so kids 7 or 8 to like, I think our oldest student was probably 80 years old or so. So we took young kids to senior citizens, and we implemented this yoga program. They got to come to yoga once a week for, I think it was 8 or 10 weeks. And we implemented this program, and kids who had never done yoga before, never been exposed to mindfulness, but had this, had basically in the previous, I want to say it was 3 years, there was some flooding in Wharton the year before Hurricane Harvey, and then I think there was even a flood the year before that. So these families and these kids had basically experienced having their home, their physical residence either destroyed or unlivable almost every year for 3 years. So the city and the community was facing some serious social challenges. Lots of PTSD type symptoms, suicide, substance abuse, a lot of pretty difficult problems to address. And this program that we created is like a health and wellness or mindfulness-based health and wellness program, was to help kind of address some of those issues and give people some strategies that they could use in class and outside of class to like manage some of the way that they're feeling. And so right now they're still teaching community classes down in Wharton that are available to the public free of charge for them to continue to like learn and develop these skills. So what my company did is we trained the teachers, gave them the curriculum to use, created some visuals and like other classroom materials for them to aid them in their teaching. And we're sort of providing ongoing consulting work and additional training for these teachers and supporting them for the work they're doing in their community. And I'm pretty excited about it.
Okay, so these are people in the community that live in the community. So, for instance, these are people that live in Wharton, and you've trained them to continue the program in your physical absence. Now, did they have to go through some 200-hour yoga teacher training program? Did they talk about the kind of training that you've been able to equip them with?
Yeah, so I was able to train my student who came up with the idea for the program as a lead teacher. So she has a lot. She's already been certified as a yoga instructor, and she's already very highly experienced. She's been teaching yoga for a number of years. She was able to assist me in getting these other trainees up to that 200-hour teacher training. So we were able to provide them with a 200-hour teacher training and basically just ongoing continuing education courses and classes to kind of just help them in their teaching, address any issues that may be specific to the demographic that they're working in that may come up. And it was a couple members actually from her. She's also my student in Wharton is also a leader of the like a youth group in the Methodist church there, and a couple of the teachers are actually, one of them is a college student and one of them is actually a junior or senior in high school in that community that have sort of already been in my students' sphere of influence for a while and seen kind of like the benefits that yoga has to offer. And they felt compelled to like become leaders and teachers themselves and share it with their friends and neighbors down there.
That's very cool. So where is the class being taught? If people who live in that community want to try a class, where would they find that?
Yes. Let me I'm going to bring it up. Let's see.
Okay. And we can post it too.
Yeah.
So that would be great.
Let me see. The name where they're teaching it now is called T.H.E House, and it's like a community health organization in Wharton. And people who live, it is at 413 West Colorado Street in Wharton, Texas, and the zip is 77488. And if you want, you could check them out on their Facebook page. And it's T.H.E House, is HESEDHOUSE. And the first photo you'll see is my student Josh on that page leading a class for the youth that we did this summer. The program was called It Is Well, and it was supported by the United Methodist Church of Wharton.
Okay, great. Wow. I'm wondering if you have just one or two short stories of individual kids or adults and how it may be affected their lives going through this 8 to 10 week practice with you guys.
So one of the things that I noticed about the children in particular, children and adolescents, is, based on some of the other things that were going on in the community, they seem to be on kind of high levels of alert at all times. They're sort of, they're living in a state of basically like fight or flight. Their nervous systems are kind of at that high level of arousal a lot of the time. And so what I really saw is these kids could come into this safe place. They were able to move their bodies and express some nervous energy out. And a lot of what we saw was kids, when they were given permission to rest and relax, like at the end of the class, a lot of times they fell asleep. And so clearly they just needed that rest, and they needed the shutdown time. But there were a couple kids, in particular, we'll call one Lloyd, and I believe he was in third grade, never done yoga before, never been exposed to it. He was like a bigger kid, kind of quiet, kept to himself. But when he would come to class, he wouldn't skip a single position or a single breath. And when it would come to the rest pose time, he would lay down, and usually he would fall asleep. But he came in and did this every week for that full 8 or 10 weeks. Every week he would come in, rest, relax. Another one, Lloyd was like in third grade. There was another kid, let's call him Deshaun, and he came in and he was joking and laughing and trying to like laugh off, like he wasn't sure what yoga was. He wasn't sure he really wanted to do it. He wanted to kind of be the center of attention and kind of entertain the other kids in the class. But when he was able to just kind of take his attention inside, practice some yoga, challenge his body, and then rest and relax at the end, it was a 100% turnaround. So he was sort of deflecting with humor at the beginning, but at the end, he walked out and he was calm, clear, focused, and centered, and just like said that he felt great. And that was like his first class. So some of these kids who maybe otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to do this are having these really I would call them really positive first-time experiences with yoga and mindfulness, that even if they're, like I said, even if it doesn't serve them right now, even though they have the opportunity, in the future they'll realize that they can engage in a practice that connects them to themselves, gives them that peace and focus and centered feeling, that maybe they'll come back to it later on. And that's, I really see myself as just sort of sprinkling the seeds of the benefits of yoga and meditation and mindfulness everywhere. I wouldn't necessarily consider myself an expert, but really passionate dilettante maybe.
Hmm. So this is happening in Wharton. You sprinkled those seeds, and also there are people now in the community who are trained to continue the program so that it can sustain itself. And
that was the most important thing for me when they approached me, was like, can you come lead this program? And I'm like, well, why just come lead it when I can train your community members? That's the only way to make it sustainable. And to me, it's like, I don't want people to be dependent on me. Like, I really want everyone to become mindfully self-sufficient, or self-sufficient in mindfulness, and really in all other ways, because then as my teacher likes to say, a rising tide raises all boats. So if people take it and own it, then they will share it, and it'll just kind of one flame will light a bunch of candles.
For sure. So going forward, what are the kinds of communities that might benefit from this type of program that is happening in Wharton? What are those kinds of communities or those groups of people, and then how can they get in touch with you?
So everybody in Wharton, because everybody in the whole city was affected by the flood. And I feel like it can be a beneficial practice for everyone, regardless of your walk of life. So whether you weren't affected by the flood or you were, like you know somebody that was, and being in a climate of so much stress has an effect on all of us. So I'll give you the exact dates and times of the classes that they're having in Wharton. I'm just going to check my notes here. They're teaching yoga. So the T.H.E House, I gave you the address earlier. They have a Facebook page. They're located at Dinosaur Park in Wharton. They're teaching Mondays at 8 a.m. Mondays at 9 a.m. The second and fourth Tuesdays of the month at 4:30 and 6 p.m. Thursdays, on the first and third Thursdays, they're teaching at 5:30 p.m. And the Thursday night class is a more gentle, slower class, which may be better for people with injuries or health conditions that might need a little bit of extra coaching.
That's great. Lots of opportunities, actually. Okay, so perhaps other communities that maybe have had some type of significant trauma or stress. What about just this community over here, South Houston, let's say, for instance? Everyday stresses, but not an acute, immediate trauma. Is that it? How can they benefit?
It's I kind of go back to what I was saying about just self-awareness, and I think everybody can benefit from that practice. Slowing down. I would welcome people who feel resistant to the idea of practicing yoga to give it a shot, to go and stretch your comfort zone and give it a try and see how it works for you. Everyone, to me, has the opportunity to benefit from it. There's any number of, in this day and age, there's no reason not to give it a try. There's such a low cost of initial investment. You can go on YouTube. You could follow along with the class on YouTube. There are apps for your cell phone. These are just things I'm aware of. I don't receive any, I'm not selling this. So Headspace is an app that you can get that will take you through different guided meditations. There's mindfulness-based stress relief, which is John Kabat-Zinn's program on mindfulness that has probably some of the most compelling research behind it. He's shown, in his research that when mindfulness is coupled with a treatment, the one I'm thinking of is they treated people for psoriasis. The people who were meditating healed faster than the control group just receiving the regular treatment. There's just any number of ways and approaches that you could take. There's the Houston Zen Center. All of those people are more than qualified and very experienced in being able to take you through a mindfulness practice. We have any number of yoga studios. And I think my biggest advice would just be start now, it won't, and don't try and control the process. If you sit for 5 minutes, it may not feel very good, but just breathe through it, stay with your breath, keep coming back to the present moment, and then the real, what I've noted is that the real benefit comes from just consistency. So if you do 5 minutes a day, in 2 weeks, you're going to feel a lot different than on the first day or in the first week even. And you get really, really profound changes as you go out from the point that you started. So the longer and more consistent your practice, the more benefit you find. And then there's all sorts of retreats, like mindfulness retreats, of Vipassana centers. They leave 10-day retreats. That's like the first one. And if you're looking to just really really get into this in a big way, it's not something to be undertaken lightly, but I mean it's something that could really help transform your life. As far as like with relation to mindfulness and present moment awareness, and that's a very, what I would call like a peak experience. And there's a high cost of entry as far as what your physical and mental state will be going through in something like that. But they can be really powerful. There's a family that goes to Beehive, and the dad is a psychiatrist who practices 30 minutes a day. And he and I spoke, and he was just talking about how out of this world and necessary it is, and how much he uses it both in his personal life and also sharing it with his patients, as like it's sort of like a way that he feels like he can treat people the best is by having them practice mindfulness. So there's so many opportunities out there. If you'd like to get in touch with me, my email is abharting@gmail.com. You can also search my name on Facebook. Send me a message or a friend request, and you can reach out to me that way. Those are probably the two best ways to get a hold of me. And mostly now I'm teaching private sessions for individuals. I'm also working on partnering with some after-school programs to create to kind of share the curriculum across I'm just looking to, I guess, spread more seeds, as I mentioned before, like sow more seeds out there, so more people have the opportunity to experience this and the benefits that it offers.
Thank you so much, Aaron. You've just shared a wealth of resources and inspiring stories. Thank you so much for talking with me today. I'm looking forward to sharing this with people. And thank you for being that cold, still water reflecting heaven in very practical, grounded ways. Appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa, and thanks for having me on. I really, really admire all the work that you're doing. I mean, both Texas and sharing this, I feel like it's really important for people to know, there's options out there, there's resources out there to, meet everyone's individual specific need. And I hope people will stay curious and just, for the benefit of themselves and their families and kids. So thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you. We're throwing away our excuses, and we're making time for a couple minutes for ourselves to pay attention to breathing and what we're curious about. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Lisa.